Hello everybody, it's Red and welcome back to more Skyward Sword. Last time... What happened last time? Oh well, I can't remember, probably not important. We finished the game. We did that. So what comes after that? What could I possibly have bonus videos to do on this game? Basically, the first thing that is gonna happen after you beat The Legend of Zelda Skyward Sword is that the game's gonna ask you if you want to save your adventure. Yes, after the credits. And the reason for that is because The Legend of Zelda Skyward Sword has this thing known as Hero Mode. Hero Mode is basically a hard mode where you're gonna play through the entire story all over again from the very beginning. But now, you're gonna take double damage. There are some more stuff that I'm gonna highlight better in the next video, but just know that it's a New Game Plus. And in case you're wondering, I mentioned this, I don't remember how long ago, but every single treasure that you collected in your adventure, you get to keep in your Hero Mode file. So, if I were to beat the game right now with these treasures and save to activate Hero Mode on this save file, what would happen is that I would have all of these things from the get-go. Meaning that as soon as I get the slingshot, for example, I could upgrade it into the scatter shot because I have all the dusk relics and everything else that I could possibly need. So, you know, it really helps out with your adventure, especially because you take double damage in that thing, so everything is much harder. Other than that, once again, I'm gonna highlight the differences between Hero Mode and regular mode in the next bonus video, because for now, we're gonna be talking about some cool stuff that we skipped for one reason or another. The first one being Zelda. What happened to her after Groove saved her? Well, as Impa's gonna tell right here, as Impa is gonna tell us right here, she's resting behind those doors once again. You know, it's just what she does. Where is Zelda? Behind these doors. She's always behind these doors. Also, didn't Zelda like go to sleep in the crystal a few moments ago here in the past? And then now Zelda is resting there in front of the crystal Zelda. What is going... Guys, don't Titanic door the heck out of this game. Just don't. I get that they could have given us an explanation and all that, but it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter! So, anyway, talking to Bruce over here, he's just gonna cheer us on and that kind of thing, so yeah, there we go. You may not ever see this. This really is a thing that only people who either lost a lot of health during Horde, so they had to come up here and rest in the stool, or maybe they forgot some stuff. Oh, hey boy. So they're gonna go back to the present so they can do some side questing. Unless you have that kind of thing going on with your game, yeah, you're probably not gonna get to see this. Unless you're like me and you wanna explore as much as you possibly can. Hey Impa, what do you have to say? Oh, she actually has no words for us. So, whatever. So, next thing that I wanna show off is back here. After we defeated Demise with the Triforce, we dropped a temple on it. We dropped a freaking island on Demise. And the island is right here. The Outlet of the Goddess is actually down in the surface. Isn't that one of the coolest details ever? This right here, it is closed off, so there's that. You can never go back in there ever again. But, like, just look at this. Did the developers have to do this? Did they have to, like, retexture some stuff and then place some models in a different place and then create this entirely different load zone so that you can come here? No, they didn't. They could have easily have had Granny tell Link, oh no, don't go through those doors, your destiny awaits past the gate of time, yada yada yada. But no, they actually went through the trouble of doing this for people who went out of their way to look for it. And no, there isn't anything important here. You do get to see some Faron grasshoppers as usual. You know, we are in Faron. So yeah, we're in Faron. You get to see Faron grasshoppers. But also, and this is something that, once again, they didn't have to do this. They didn't have to put this much detail on this. But they did. And I get it. It's not like it's super complicated in freaking truck. Ooh, my voice. But here, down in the surface now, we can actually find sky bugs. Look at this. Bugs are extremely resilient, so it makes sense that they would survive the fall of the island of the goddess. So, yeah, once again, it's just one of those tiny details that, no, the developers did not have to go through it at all, but they did, and it makes the game so much cooler for that. Another couple details is that if you dive down into Farron after dropping the island down, after completing Sky Keep, you're actually gonna see the map screen show a tiny difference. Once again, one of those tiny things that they did, and it's really cool that they did. So, yeah. You can still go up to the remains of the Grucinator, F, and walk around, you know, just go all over the place. There's really no reason for you to do that unless you want to access that specific bird statue right there. I don't know, back in time maybe? That's a possibility why you might want to do that. Probably not, because back in time is used more efficiently. I don't know. But yeah, just like lots of cool stuff. And probably one of my favorite details is that maybe you noticed this in the beginning of the game, but there is this little cracked area right here in the Forgotten Temple, and it actually does complete with the Isle of the Goddess. You might have noticed that there were like these two broken areas in these two separate places up in the sky and down in the surface. And yeah, of course, there's the legend, like, Skyloft came from the surface, so it rose up into the sky. And even though the sky map doesn't perfectly match how the Isle of the Goddess fell down into the surface, it's still really cool that this happened. Like, you can see the Triforce right there. You can see a really cool reference to another Zelda game right there. So, and also, it builds into the lore because those symbols right there, they existed from the very beginning of the storyline. I don't know, just tiny pieces of lore and tiny details that you might have noticed. And it's really cool when games reward you for noticing this kind of thing. Like, oh hey, this thing was broken before. I wonder what happened to the other part. Just small things, you know? It's the small stuff. Pit stop number 2 is no one other than Lanayru, because guess what? Since his whole thing is reviving challenges of our past, well, there are new challenges from our past to be revived. Yeah, look at this. After you beat Girahim and you know, unlock the final battle against Demise, you can actually fight the third imprisoned Horde or Girahim the Third. And, ooh boy. So, remember how when we were first here, I was talking about, like, coming back here, not saving this to do later because it's gonna be harder? Yeah, this is why it's harder. Now, in the mix of all the 8 things you have to fight, it's these guys, you know, like the final fights. Demise is nowhere to be found because, of course, he is not here yet. Lanayru only revives battles from our past, and since Demise is in the future, well, yeah, we can't really fight Demise here. Oh, but Red, I really like the Demise fight. Is there a way for me to fight him in the lightning round? Why, yes, there is. In Master Mode. Sorry, not Master Mode. In Hero Mode. Demise is gonna be unlocked from the beginning, and so will, you know, Girahim, Horde, and all that good stuff. So, yeah, that's a thing that happens. This basically means that in Hero Mode, getting the Hylian Shield and one piece of heart is potentially much harder, because you might have to face Demise on the get-go. And, you know, Horde's gonna eat up a lot of time, Girahim's gonna eat up a lot of time. There's a third imprisoned that you may find. The Hylian Shield still only requires 8 wins. So, you know, there's that. But, okay, yeah. So, Hylian Shield still only requires 8 wins. So, it's not like, oh yeah, now everything is, you know, much harder to do. Yep, I failed that. It's just that there's a chance that you will find extremely tough opponents. Sorry, Zoo. I'm kind of shaking the nunchuck here to guard. Yeah, it is potentially harder. It doesn't mean that it is gonna be harder, just like, it's chance, it's luck if you're gonna get, like, Demise on your second go. Yeah, you may not get Demise at all in Hero Mode. Or maybe you will, like, get him on the second go. Or maybe you can just have a Guardian Potion Plus and fight him on the first turn, so that you don't have to worry about damage, because yeah, Demise is gonna be dealing 4 hearts of damage here in hero mode, so yikes! However, since we do have more fights to go through, this also means that we get more rewards. What are those rewards, you ask? Well, nope, shwip and shwip. Basically rupees. Yeah, rupees or treasure, that's it. Sorry, Zoo, I have to spin attack and defeat Girahim. There we go. So, yeah, that's the Lightning Round Plus, as I like to call it. Now we have Horde, Girahim, and the Imprisoned 3. And on Hero Mode, from the very first time that we come here to an area, you don't have to finish Girahim in the Sealed Grounds. You're gonna get Demise on top of all of that. So, yeah, Lightning Round, potentially harder. Let's see what the second fight's gonna be. I'm not gonna do this whole thing, I'm just gonna, yeah. No, it's Caldera. Bye! Yay! Our next stop is nowhere else other than one of my favorite rooms in the game. We're here, it's nighttime. We're just relaxing now because there are some really cool Easter eggs that are far too cool for me to just put in a montage and that make it that, like, no. So, the first thing that I want to mention here is a sound effect that you might have heard hundreds of times if you've played through Breath of the Wild. Don't worry, no spoilers, it's just one sound effect. Remember when we were making the soup for Levias? Well, after Pum was done cooking the soup, we heard this little jingle. Recognize that from anywhere? That's right, it's the Breath of the Wild cooking jingle. Yeah, it showed up here much earlier than it did in Breath of the Wild. I guess they just recycled it from here? Or maybe they were like, oh hey, this sounds like a cool cooking sound effect. Huh, I wonder if we could use it again. And then they saved it and then they were like, oh hey, we can cook now. So, I don't know. There are like, maybe they just said, hey, let's make a reference to Skyward Sword that not a lot of people are gonna get. So, there you go. The next Easter egg is something that happened very early in our adventure. And I gotta be honest, I didn't remember that until I started playing the game again, like after this playthrough that you watched right here. When I was playing through Hero Mode, I noticed that Gorko said something about there being a tree in the sky that can give you eternal life and heal any illness. Does that sound familiar? Yeah. I didn't notice that in all the times I played through the game until like now. The third Easter egg is one that is not as fun, admittedly. Remember when we were in this part right here over in Skipper's Retreat? And I was talking about like environmental storytelling and how they could have just, you know, let us come to the conclusions that we need to in order to realize that Skipper was loved and that kind of thing. I'm just gonna put the images in there. And finally, this Easter egg is actually pretty cool. Throughout the whole game, we've been hearing the song called The Ballad of the Goddess. And this is a song that Zelda plays, and it's supposed to be a very important song that allows us to unlock many things, and it allows Zelda to unlock her goddess memories and all the good stuff. But what happens if we reverse that song? Yeah, the Ballad of the Goddess is a reversed Zelda's Lullaby. That's a really cool detail. Like, wow! I have no words about it, honestly. It's just one of my favorite details about the Ballad of the Goddess and this game in general, how they just reversed the song and there we go. Just a bunch of extremely fun Easter eggs. And you might be wondering, Red, what happened to the Isle of the Goddess? Did it really fall from Skyloft? You bet your rupees it did. It's nowhere to, it's somewhere to be found. It's in Farron, of course. But yeah, it's just gone. But what about Skyloftians? Do they have anything to say? Well, yes, they do. They do have stuff to say. Not only do they, talk about, like, how the Island of the Goddess is just gone, they also talk about the earthquake, about before we went into Skykeep. So, yeah, they actually mention all that stuff, and that is just, again, it's the cool details. I'm gonna be showing those off in a little bit. But first, we have one final piece of business to take care of. Right here in the waterfall, and this is the very last thing of note, worth making note of. Oh my goodness, that's a good way to fumble sentences. Is right here in the waterfall cave at night, and if you come over... Wait. Well, after some save file mix-up, if you come over here to the waterfall cave at night, my sources say, I haven't personally confirmed this, but I have no reason to doubt that source. They say that after you defeat, well, not defeat, after you beat the Skyloft Silent Realm, this guy is actually gonna show up, butterflies and all that stuff. So, yeah, who is this, you ask? Well, this is called the Midnight Merchant. And what does he do for you? Well, he sells you treasures, 6 treasures to be more specific. You can either buy goddess plumes, bluebird feathers, golden skulls, or monster horns, thirst relics, and evil crystals. That's all he sells. Really, the only ones worth really buying are evil crystals, golden skulls, and goddess plumes, because everything else is actually not too hard to get. I guess bluebird feathers. But the thing is that everything here is extremely expensive. So, why is he here for real? Well, if you haven't gotten every single upgrade before going into Skykeep, or, Demise, Horde, whatever, this is actually a surefire way of getting the treasure that you want. It does cost a ton of rupees, as you can see, but by the end of the game, hopefully, you're gonna have plenty of rupees. So, it's fine, to spend those rupees because you're not gonna be able to spend them anywhere else. When it comes to hero mode, you don't get to keep your rupees, but you do get to keep your treasures. So one thing that you can do is before you beat Demise and activate hero mode, you can just come over here and talk to the Midnight Merchant so you can get some treasures. And, make sure that all the rupees you collected don't completely go to waste. However, in order to buy more stuff from this guy, yeah, it takes a while, but it is much faster than roaming the surface for, just looking for treasure. But yeah, it is there. I guess I could improve it to make it like so you don't have to leave the place. Maybe he just gives you, like, other gossip stones can drop treasure. And every single one of the treasures that he sells, well, not bluebird feathers, but all the other ones, you can't, well, also not monster horns, but all the other ones have like world sprites, world models that you can just stumble upon and then roll over so you can pick them up. But no, just treasure chests, why? I don't get it. And with that taken care of, there really isn't anything else that I want to show off here in Skyward Sword. But there are a few points of conversation that I do feel it's important to talk about. And while I'm talking about those, just giving my 2 cents on the whole thing, feel free to agree with me, disagree with me, each person has their own opinion, this is just mine. While I'm talking about that stuff, I'm gonna be showing off just a few clips of cool stuff that I skipped over mostly for the sake of pacing, here in the story, like, just to make sure that I didn't like completely cut off story momentum just so I could go talk to this one funny NPC, so yeah, I'm gonna be showing off the clips and talking about something completely unrelated. So yeah, let's jump right into that. Ah. So The Legend of Zelda has never really been known for epic final bosses, you know? It's always more about building up the lore behind the boss and what it means to the story than the actual fights themselves. And while I will say that that is not a big problem, it is just a choice that developers make when creating final encounters. I do have to say that sometimes it just feels a little underwhelming, you know? Like, the build up to Demise, it's awesome. You know, first you feel like, oh yeah, the Triforce, holy crap, and oh my gosh, oh, and Zelda, finally, this is over, and oh my gosh, we just watched the imprisoned get squished, and that is lovely. But, whoa, plot twist, Girahim is here, and now he's in the past, and oh my gosh, he's doing the ritual thing, and wow, we're fighting it, how many goblins are there? And then we get to fight Girahim, and he's just mad, he is just mad, and that creates for a really cool encounter against Girahim. And then Demise comes out, and even though a part of me does feel like he is extremely powerful and I'm like, oh crap, another part of me is like, who's this guy? You know, like, throughout the game we were fighting Girahim, and he's always like, yes, my master, and we fight the imprisoned one 3 times in total, and I'm like, okay, yeah, cool. This thing is pretty tough, but because you fight the imprisoned one 3 times, and the fights are kind of the same all 3 times, even though there are a couple mechanical differences, Demise himself doesn't really feel that dangerous. Or like, it's basically like the whole show don't tell thing, you know? We saw how dangerous Girahim can be. He just kicked Groose and Impa out of the way like that. Also, really cool reveal about Impa right there. I did not expect that. It did catch me off guard. Like, towards the end I was like, maybe? But then I was like, oh wow, okay, yeah, oh wow. But throughout the game I was just like, nah, just an old lady, she's nice. But anyway, I digress. We feel how dangerous Girahim is. We see how dangerous Girahim is. And we only hear how dangerous Demise is. And I totally get it. We're supposed to be like, okay, this guy is super dangerous. He's dangerous to the point where he put up a fight against the goddess, Hylia. He was able to fight against Hylia, but again, we also don't know how powerful Hylia is, so we have no point of comparison. And his minion is Girahim, and Girahim is actually pretty powerful himself. But also, we beat Girahim every single time, except for the one time when he caught us off guard, and also the one time when we didn't even fight him back in the Temple of Time. I honestly think that it all comes down to the winning curve. In a story, in a hero's journey, there are supposed to be low points in the story where the main character loses, and so when the main character like comes back up and has that awesome moment of, yeah, here we go, I did it. Like, it feels better, and then when we finally see the bad guy, we just think back to like all the times when the hero lost and was beaten down, and there's supposed to be this back and forth in the final showdown, when sometimes the hero is winning, sometimes the hero is losing, and finally the hero comes above and beats the bad guy. Like, there's supposed to be some ebb and flow to stories, and this also translates to the final encounter, and The Legend of Zelda has never really done that. We have never really seen any ebb and flow in final encounters. It's always been like, okay, I did it, okay, phase 2, I did it, okay, phase 3, yep, I did it again, okay, phase 4, yeah, I did it again. And sometimes in video games, it's kind of hard to have a final boss that actually presents you with that ebb and flow. And I'm not gonna spoil specifics, I'm just gonna cite a couple examples of games that have amazing final encounters. Don't worry, no spoilers for the endings or the final battles or anything. But take for example Kirby Triple Deluxe. That is the best final encounter in video game history. Just wow. Another example would be the first God of War. Holy crap, what a final encounter! And I'm sure you guys can also think of some amazing examples, and please don't go into too much detail in the comments, cause, you know, spoilers and that kind of thing. And I get it. Sometimes it's kind of difficult to have a game where the final encounter does have that ebb and flow, that back and forth between hero and villain, because video games in general are supposed to be like this power fantasy, and The Legend of Zelda absolutely plays to that. But because The Legend of Zelda plays to that fantasy of super-powered hero, we end up losing a little bit in emotion in final encounters and how dangerous bad guys can be. I honestly can only think of one example, maybe two, in The Legend of Zelda, where we actually feel how dangerous the bad guy can be. If you've played the Majora's Mask, I'm sure you can kinda see what I'm talking about here. It's not like only the final encounter matters, it's all about the entire build-up that you get throughout the entire story. And Majora's Mask does that very well. Skyward Sword, unfortunately, not so much. The final boss does feel a little underwhelming. Don't get me wrong, it is an amazing fight to fight, but I just wish there was more to it. You know, once again, I get it, development issues and yeah, all that stuff. Also, the game is Skyward Sword, so putting emphasis in the sword in the final encounter when you get to like Horde, the Endless Plunge, and then Girahim, and then Demise. Yeah, sure, give emphasis to the sword, I get it. But with this being a Zelda game, I just feel like all the items that we collected throughout the adventure turned out to just be tools to the end, and not really, like, things that you use to become a hero. And yeah, you can also argue that hero comes from what you do, and not what you have, but we've spent the entire game collecting these things to help us progress, and then at the end, the only thing you need to do is slice. Sure, the shield helps a ton, but you just slice. A big part of me really wishes that the Demise boss fight had a lot more going on. Not just the build-up against Horde, Girahim, Endless Plunge and all that stuff, which was all very epic, and closing it with Demise felt good. I also felt a little empty, and even though I am the kind of person who, as I mentioned previously, I usually go like, yeah, it's good that it is the way it is, and I don't usually think like, oh, it's so sad that it isn't that. A part of me does think that, and yes, I get that I'm contradicting myself a little bit. It's just that I don't tend to focus on that too much. It's just that I usually say, oh yeah, it could have been better like this. If this and this had happened, it would have been cooler. But I'm not like, oh, the game is bad because they didn't do it. So, once again, I can think of maybe one or two examples in The Legend of Zelda where that actually does happen. Where you actually feel like everything you've been doing throughout the game builds up to this point. And not just, oh yeah, this one point, the final encounter is one more encounter. You know, once again, this is not to say that the Demise encounter is bad, it's just that it was a little short-lived, there are some problems there, but all in all, I do enjoy it. I think it is a good ending for Skyward Sword. If it had been bigger, it would have been even cooler, but it is already very cool with the way it is right now. And then after that, how we move on to saying goodbye to Fi, and Zelda saying goodbye to Impa. First of all, Fi's goodbye. I know I'm not the only person who tears up during that scene, and I've watched it maybe 5 or 6 times at this point, you know, with my own playthroughs and a couple Let's Plays that I watched, and I still get a little bit choked when I watch it, because, I don't know. It's just one of those things where I'm like, okay, yeah, all that stuff happened, but at the end, it's sad to see you go. And I think they actually did that pretty well with making Fi so present. You actually feel kind of sad when she has to go, you know? Like, she was so present. And I know that sometimes she was indeed very annoying. And I do think that they could have toned her down, but she had some really fun personality. And I think that what happened here is hindsight. While you're going through it, it's like, okay, yeah, I have these feelings. But once it's done and you look back, you're like, you know what, Fi? Huh. You were kind of annoying sometimes, but you were part of this adventure. And then when you have to say goodbye, it's just, yeah. You already know that this is an origin story, so because in other Zelda games the Master Sword doesn't really have a soul or anything of the sort, they had to, quote-unquote, kill off Fi, so that's the reason why she goes to sleep, and they just said, oh yeah, she has to fight to keep Demise imprisoned, which doesn't really work out, as you know. Or maybe it does, depending on how you interpret the story, whatever. It is a tearful moment for me and a lot of other people, and I don't know. I think that part of me likes Fi so much just because of the goodbye. And, you know, the build-up that leads to the goodbye, of course. But whenever I replay the game, I'm like, yeah, all of this is going on, and eventually, we're gonna have to say goodbye. I don't know, it's just something that gets to me, you know? It's a little different from the whole thing that happens with Zelda, because, like, you know that Link and Zelda are gonna end up having a good life together in the surface, you know? Like, oh yeah, there's the whole epilogue thing. So, that's cool, but Fi is just not there. And so, playing the game, knowing that she will be gone, it hits you differently, you know? It does. It just, yeah. But speaking of Zelda, I don't really have an answer to this, but let's talk about Zelda real quick and Damsel in Distress. So, of course, you guys know that the whole damsel in distress thing is definitely not healthy. It is kinda bad. So, whenever I see damsel in distress in any kind of media, I immediately go like, yeah, it's bad, shouldn't exist, sorry, just no, it's toxic, it's bad, please don't put it in. But as far as Skyward Sword and Zelda goes, I don't really have an answer to the question of, in this game, is Zelda a damsel in distress? In the very beginning of the game, it's basically like, hey, Zelda's helping out, that's awesome, so Bruce, you suck, Zelda, you rock, and she's all pushing Bruce around, and that's really cool, that's really fun to watch, and she's really taking charge, you know? And then she gets sent down to the surface, where she's just going from place A to place B, trying to evade danger, which is cool, it's definitely a way to have the character act. And then after she runs away, we just don't see her at all, we just assume that she's hiding back in the Temple of Hylia, and then she literally just sleeps. All right. So I'm really on the fence as far as like, what I think about Zelda's character in this game, because when we watch her arc, I guess you could say, basically, in the very beginning of the game, she's definitely a boss, pushing Bruce around, going like, Bruce, shut up, you suck, just stop being the way you are, because that sucks and I don't like that. And that's really cool. And then Girahim whips up that tornado, which sends her to the surface, and old Impa finds her, and then helps her out, says, okay, here's what you have to do, go there, and then she goes there. We don't know how much young Impa does back in Faron, but we do know that she is pretty much, like, when we find her in Eldin, we find out that she is looking after Zelda. Apparently not perfectly, because she did let Zelda get kidnapped when she could have just swept in goodbye to the Bokoblins, but I guess she was just distracted a little bit, scolding Link or something, I don't know. But here are both sides of the argument. In this game, Zelda is protected by Impa. She doesn't actively protect herself. It's fine to have help, but she literally can't do anything to protect herself. Counterpoint, she's still learning the extent of her powers, so it's hard for her to be able to protect herself. Lore kind of explains why that is. Counterpoint, just because Lore explains it doesn't mean it's well written and not damsel in distress. Counterpoint, she is actively fighting against Demise, even though it is written to be in the background and she's just sleeping for pretty much the entire game. She is fighting against Demise with her goddess praying powers. Counterpoint, that's not that active of a way of fighting. Not that she has to pick up the Master Sword and slice Girahim a few times, no. But chilling in her bedroom and praying while Link is going around trying to find the Triforce so he can finish off Demise, it's arguable. You know, like, that's basically where I'm at. As far as Zelda the character throughout the franchise goes, there are examples where she is absolutely 100% a damsel in distress, and there are examples where she is absolutely 100% not a damsel in distress. Here in Skyward Sword, I am on the fence. I lean towards she's not a damsel in distress because lore says so. You know, she's praying, she's fighting in her own way, using goddess powers and that kind of thing. She gives Link the information, but at the same time, she's always being rescued by either Impa or Link, and I don't know. I haven't made up my mind about that, and I don't know if I ever will. You know, lately, like these past few years, I've grown more and more comfortable being able to answer questions with, I don't know. I don't have an opinion on that. I don't have a formed opinion. And I think that's where I'm gonna end up in the debate of, is Zelda a damsel in distress in Skyward Sword? I don't have a formed opinion on that. I'm open to both sides of the argument, and as time moves on and I see more stuff about it, I may change sides, I may lean more towards one side than the other. But I don't know, I love the character of Zelda, but I don't know how much I love the journey of the character Zelda, you know? I love how she's all friendly towards Link and there's obviously some shipping going on, but I am not 100% sure how I feel about her character arc. On a similar note, we have Impa. Impa is a character who can be considered controversial here in Skyward Sword. Yes, it is another point of controversy in Skyward Sword. Basically, the way Impa acts. We first meet her back in Elden, where she's like, hey, Link, hurry up, Zelda's up ahead, you need to get good. You're being a little too slow here, so I'm gonna give you a hand. And then we see her again at the end of the Earth Temple, where she gives the whole speech of like, you were late, you were too slow, you suck. And that speech is definitely never really met with good eyes by a lot of people, because it's not like Link was purposefully late. Impa was just able to fly over the temple, and Link doesn't have that ability, and Impa can just teleport, and Link can't do that. But the way I interpret that scene where she says you were late, you were not strong enough, isn't really Impa scolding Link on not being fast. It's Impa giving Link a wake-up call to be like, dude, there is so much more at stake here than you think. Yeah, sure, you're a friend, that's definitely a big thing, but you don't know the half of it, boy. Get good, get strong, gather intelligence. You think it's just about finding your friend? No, dude, the world is at stake here. Wake up. You're being too slow, you're not mature enough, you're not powerful enough. And this way of thinking is backed up by the way Farron talks to Link after he leaves the Ancient Cistern, and she's all like, I guess you are the chosen hero and all that stuff, but I still don't think you're strong enough to wield the full power of that sword, boy. You need to get better, you need to get stronger, you need to find ways to become better, to be actually able to protect the goddess and take down Demise, because as you are, nah, you just don't have the power. And while Impa doesn't outright say that in both like young or old Impa ways or whatever, it can be inferred that that's what she meant when she said, you were too slow, boy. Do my words anger you? Let them. This is the fuel you need to wake up and smell the taxes. This is not child's play, okay? The world is at risk here. And while that's very much open to interpretation because the game never really outright spells that out for you, well, let's talk a little bit more about writing theory, shall we? There's this whole thing called death of the author that basically states that if it's not in the work, it's not canon. As simple as that. So for example, J.K. Rowling saying that Dumbledore's gay? No, it's nowhere in the books. So no, it's not true. But there's also the camp that says, when a story is published as final, everything about that story is open to interpretation. And if you see it as X, for you, it is X. And I land in that second camp. Once the story is in my hands, my headcanons are true for me. I always make sure to make the separation of canon and headcanon, and this whole Impa thing is absolutely a headcanon, because as I said, nowhere in the game you'll find anything to support my argument of Impa here was saying, Link, you're too green, wake up and get good. It is a headcanon. What can I say? But if you interpret this story in another way, we end up with a character that's just whiny and doesn't really make a lot of sense. Some people will say, oh hey, if back in the Earthspring Impa had just allowed Link to go through the teleporter with her and Zelda over to the Temple of Time, then things would have been so much easier, but instead she had to be like, no, do my words anger you, boy? Let them. And I get it, it's true, maybe things would have been easier, better, whatever. But at the same time, the trials that Link found in Lanayru Desert made him stronger, made him more able to protect Zelda in the end, made him more prepared to take on Girahim and Demise. So, in my eyes, Impa doing that kind of thing isn't really a bad thing for Link, or for Zelda for that matter. So, I don't know, just a little bit of where I land on that, because I've seen discussions about this online, and I definitely don't agree with the whole camp of Impa sucks. So yeah, that's basically a wrap on what I think about Impa. I could just ramble on for hours about this and have an actual discussion with someone where maybe we'll meet halfway, something like that. But to me, Impa is a good character. That's how I interpret the story. And if you think differently, that's totally fine. And then to put a wrap on things that the internet hates, that I never got the chance to talk about. The harp. So the harp as a story element, I love it. I think it's really cool. It was introduced in the very beginning of the game as like a piece of Zelda, and then we get it when Zelda's in danger and she's like, oh hey, use this, it's gonna help you, and then every time you pull out the harp you feel a little bit of Zelda in there, you know? So I like that, I like how the harp feels story-wise. as far as game mechanics go, the harp is questionable to me as well. You know, I don't hate it. I definitely don't think it was absurd that they had the harp of all things and oh no, motion controls. I will say, the choice of having the harp only be a strummable thing, it's definitely a design choice. I agree, it's not the best. People always compare it to the ocarina and how the ocarina is so much better because you get to actually play the notes and choose the songs that you play because you play the notes. I get it, and I kind of agree with it, but I don't mind too much that the harp is just strumming. Like, the game already has so much going on that I really don't mind that you don't have to stop everything and push buttons to play song. I don't mind that. I actually kinda like walking around just strumming the harp mindlessly, you know? And while they could definitely have added notes that you play so you can play a certain song, like, oh, if you press A while holding the remote that way, you'll play this note, and then that note if you hold it another way. Like, it could end up being a little more finicky and more difficult to code, and again, development issues with Skyward Sword, so maybe that's why it didn't happen, but I can see it being a little bit more fun in the end as a mechanic, so that you can, you know, just play songs whenever you want. And then add a little effect, maybe if you play the Ballad of the Goddess, you'll get some special effect, like, I don't know, it's on a 10-minute cooldown and every time you play it, you get 3 hearts off the ground. I don't know, just spitballing here, you know, you can definitely think of better stuff. If you play Nehru's Wisdom, down in the surface, you can immediately warp to the location where the Silent Realm was. You know, and then you could be like, oh, hey, hold up A, down A, left A, right A, and then boom, a thing appears in the ground, you hachai it with your sword, and then boom, you get to warp to where the Silent Realm in Nehru was. But only if you're down in the surface, so that you still get some use out of flying and pillars of light and all that good stuff. I guess that would be a fun mechanic. It would give the harp more gameplay purpose. I think that as far as the harp goes, I don't mind that it's not the ocarina. I think it just falls into the same camp as what I was saying about the Mize earlier. I don't hate it for what it is, but I guess I would like it more if it were different. But I definitely don't mind that it is the way it is. I mean, with the Mize I kinda mind. As I said, it feels a little underwhelming to fight him. But with the harp, I don't hate it. I don't mind that it is the way it is. As I said, I would like it. I'm just repeating myself at this point. So, yeah, like, the harp is not the ocarina. And I am fine with that. I think that if they had maybe another year of development, they would definitely have come up with something like that. I mean, now that we have Final Fantasy VII Remake, I think that other companies, maybe Nintendo even, we don't know, they will start looking at older games and just thinking, should we remake or remaster? And while Skyward Sword is definitely good enough to where it would be amazing with simply a remaster, if it does get remade, this is something that they could improve on. You know, the harp. First of all, make it more responsive because a lot of people don't have a good time playing it. If you get used to it, yeah, it's simple enough. But initially, people do have a hard time, and that is a thing that you have to consider. But with a short development period, I see the reason why the harp is the way it is. You know? And that about wraps up everything that I wanted to talk about and show off here in Skyward Sword. But is that everything that we have to do here? No. Eagle-eyed viewers like yourself, I'm guessing, notice that I still haven't shown off that one room in Skykeep that I skipped over because I wanted to get through the place fast and rescue Zelda. And I'm definitely gonna show that off. When? Well, next time. Because I think that room needs someone who's more of a hero than the current Link. Next time in The Legend of Zelda Skyward Sword, we tackle Hero Mode. See you guys then.